Hello and welcome to this webinar regarding our access to HE blended learning packages. My name is Julie Goodwin and I am the project manager. I also work very closely with our instructional designer, who is Rebecca O'Hare. Later on, hopefully within this webinar, you'll see some of Rebecca's excellent work on our learning platform. The purpose of today really is to look through the project so far, and as you can see here is our agenda. We're going to be looking at what we're hoping to achieve, how we're achieving it, and also have a brief demonstration. We'll also furnish you with some information regarding what's coming up in the near future. Initially, we did do some presentations regarding the project. The project has been made possible through the Department for Education's Flexible Learning Fund, which brings blended learning materials to the access to HE, higher education, health-related pathways. The Flexible Learning Fund fits within the government's policy to produce the best programme of learning and training for those in work or returning to work in the developed world. And this has been introduced through the National Retraining Scheme to assist people to reskill and upskill. And in particular, the FLF enables that to be delivered through widening participation of adult learners by removing the barriers that some learners face in attending the classroom. So that's really our project in a very short nutshell, but it's a very wide project, this FLF, across the country, and there's smaller providers, larger providers, all looking at using technology to widen participation. For us ourselves, we've focused on this project to look around access and pre-access in healthcare. As you can see on the screen, there are four outcomes from the project and where we are to date. So initially what we're looking at is creating learning materials for 50 access units that sit across the 8 modules of the Access to HE diplomas. Now, we're looking particularly at health, so that will include things like the development units, biology, health studies, sociology, psychology, as well as some sport and criminology, which seem to be emerging sectors within that particular pathway. To date, we have 44 units in development. That could be either with the content writer or with the learner through that process. Our second outcome was to produce materials for 20 units that sit within the Access to HE, that sit within the pre-access, and it's again in the healthcare area. So we've got a diploma and a certificate in that currently with Ofqual, and we have 2 units in development from there. And as well then, our third is to get the materials piloted by our learners, and we have 60 learners on programme at the moment, so we're getting very close to our target. Those 60 learners are on healthcare pathways with a further, I think it's about 27 to 30 learners from different pathways. So that's really great at the moment. So we're seeing how that part of the project is growing. And finally, we're going to be working with 3 employers to see how we can engage with employers to make sure that the materials are of a good standard. When we started the project, it was very important for us to have a clear way that we were going to be working. So we spent a little bit of time with providers in stakeholder meetings, and also looking at what we meant as an awarding organisation by blended learning. Now, there's many definitions out there in the marketplace, and we've seen some great good practice going on within our colleges. So we're seeing virtual learning environments being used, we're seeing Skype being used, and all sorts of different types of technology where learners can really be engaged. But we really needed to pull this back to open awards, and what were we going to do? So with the project starting 3 months later than anticipated in June 2018, we had to come up very clearly and precisely with what we were going to offer, so it was clear to the learner, the tutor, and to the content writer what we needed. So we decided to focus really around online learning content. So we've developed an online learning package for 50 different access units in that healthcare pathway. So it's a package of learning which covers about a third of the unit content itself. And the idea of this is that the learning package can be delivered in many different ways by the tutor. It gives them a resource, it gives the learner the opportunity to perhaps study away from class and look at different delivery models for the colleges so that they can widen their participation. The learning packages always have tentacles back into the classroom, signposting the learner back to the tutor, and also as well the tutor will be in full control of utilising the blended learning materials as well as the classroom activity and the assessment side of the Access programme. Because the programme's so short, we felt it was a bit difficult for us to include assessment and take it through all its moderation in time to sit within the project. So that's what we have. We have a learning package, a nugget of information of online learning that can be delivered away from the classroom. Working with the colleges, it was important that we presented the learner with a level 3 package of learning. So as you can see on the screen, working with the tutors, we've developed this scaffolding which enables everybody to understand what they're going to be presented with on the screen. So the green square with the C in is the content, and arguably at times that is at level 2, but we're starting the learner at something that's tangible and then moving them to something that's abstract as part of that learning journey. The S in the purple circle is around study skills. It was very important that learners have that study skills embedded into all of their studying, so we've brought that into our learning packages as well. And the FRRS are the further reading and resources, which enable the learner to start thinking and working at level 3. And throughout all of that process, the content, the study skills and the further reading are formative assessments that sit alongside that so that the learner can check their knowledge. It's all self-marking and it just completes that little sectional nugget of learning. Finally, the LU in the triangle is the levelling up. And it's an exercise which pulls everything together from the online learning and takes the learner back into the classroom. And it will be up to the tutor then to decide whether they use that exercise in class or whether they leave it as something that's left at home. So that gave us our scaffolding, and it was really important to be quite clear what we wanted our content writers to work with as they went forward. So working with content writers, we've been looking at subject specialists to be contracted into the project to help us write the on-screen materials. Now, the on-screen materials are very different than being in the classroom. They provide a narration that should be engaging to the learner and that has really good resources. We were keen because we want the learner to be presented with the best resources as well that are meaningful and relevant and working at the right level. The subject specialist completes their template and their narration and all their activities, and they present that in a template, which we'll have a look at in a moment, to the instructional designer. Becky then takes that and breaks it down further into smaller nuggets of learning, and we call those sections within the actual online package. And you'll see that in demonstration very shortly. Finally, there's some dialogue obviously between Becky and the subject specialist to make sure that what's going on screen is correct, and the subject specialist will sign off at the end of the unit to make sure everything is as they said it would be. On to content writing. Initially, it was important for us to have a very clear message to give to our writers. I know myself approaching this, I would want to know exactly how to write this for the screen. So we do have a discussion like we're just doing now with yourselves, and we also present them with this writing template, which looks like a mini lesson plan. So we asked them to complete the unit title and the unit code, and then on the left hand side of the template at the bottom there you can see the learning aim. So they place the learning aim in here so we know what the content is related to. Then in the middle section is the narration. Any knowledge checks, any further reading or resources would go into there as well. And finally on the right hand side they add in any study skills which may be relevant. And here is one we've prepared earlier from our sociology writer who's from Wirral Met College, and his writing is really good for screen, and you can see what he's selected at the top, but then there's a little sample at the bottom of the narration that would go on to the screen. So it's very friendly, very approachable, the way that it has been presented. Unfortunately, you don't see any of the study skills on this little section here, but they're only placed in as and when they're deemed necessary. Once everything's gone to screen, the subject specialist who wrote it we'll sign it off. Then what will happen is we go into a round of quality assurance. So we get a further subject specialist to review what's been written, and they feed back regarding the level and the subject knowledge. If you like, it's a form of moderation. And then finally, the other QA will be a user experience person, somebody who doesn't have the subject knowledge background, so that they could work through the screens and comment on the salience of it and whether it flows really well, that kind of thing. We're looking at what it's like as a user to experience the learning package. Ultimately, the learner is at the centre of everything that we do. We also have scrutiny panels scheduled in, and the team on the panel will look back through the quality assurance process to check that it's been upheld for each of the units. They don't stop publication. So I'm going to hook in now to our platform. We're using a system called Velsoft, and Velsoft gives us two really important things. It gives us a learning management system, which is where we can actually house the courses, and software as well, so we can write the courses. I'm just going to sign in and take you through to the platform. This is what a learner will see when they log in. Now, the link that I've just come through to Velsoft could be placed on the virtual learning environment that colleges are working on, and learners would just click onto the link and log in, as I have just done. Or they could put it on a website. I know some colleges are using things like Google Classrooms, etc. The link can be added literally to any online platform. When the learner comes in, this is their view initially. They can also see the dashboard, which looks similar to this. So it will depend what they've done. It tells them how many courses they have initially, the kinds of reports they can draw down for themselves, and their profile. When we talk to the colleges and go through the training with them, we always advise learners to go straight into their profile, which is available at the top right hand side of the screen. And what they can do in here is edit their profile and add a unique password. You'll also see from the learning management system in front of you that there's no interaction available. There's no messaging, chat or forums. It is locked down so that the learner is completely safe working in this environment. We will contact learners, but we will contact them via a different method if we need to. But most of the initial setups and everything are usually via the tutor anyway. I'm just going back to the list view, and I'm going to go and find the course that we're going to review together, which is academic essay writing. Once the learner start to access their learning, we advise them to use this table of contents, which opens out from the left hand side of the screen. Learning packages have been written so they could be viewed on a desktop, they could be viewed on a tablet, or they could be viewed on a mobile. The best experience is usually on a tablet or on a desktop, but mobile phones work just as well. Once the learner is welcomed, they can move on by using the arrow key, or they can move on by using the table of contents. The learner is then presented with a navigation video with full sound, and in addition to that, underneath there is a transcript of the text that's involved within the narration. Navigation is really key for the learner, so we're advising colleges when they're starting to utilise our materials to play this video with the entire class. Down the right hand side of the screen are crucial toolbars. So the keys that you see on the right here are unlocking level 3. So they'll have very good tips about how to take that content that's on screen and make sure you're working at level 3 with it. The light bulb may be tips, or it may be further reading that's in there as well. So when they do see that, we want the learners to go over and click on that light bulb, because there will be additional information that is so important to the main screen. And finally, there will be downloads as well. Because we've got such a wide variety of learners that participate within the Access to HE programs, it was key that we looked at a way to engage. We do have this knowledge input tracker, which is a little workbook that accompanies every online package. When the learner accesses downloads, they are taken to this resource area, and we see here is the knowledge input tracker, and it explains to the learner exactly which unit they're studying and which learning outcomes are online, as you can see here, or in the shaded area if separate course. With this particular course, it did lend itself to being online, and that we know with the development units they're slightly different than the academic units, that they're embedded into the whole of the Access programme. Within this unit, there was referencing and plagiarism, which also sat within several other units. So what we've done with referencing and plagiarism is taken it out and put it as a separate learning package from Open Awards. Then the workbook follows what you see on screen, and we've broken each of the learning packages down into smaller nuggets of information and sectioned them. So this is section 1, and as you can see, the learner has an opportunity to write down something they specifically would like to remember or something they'd like to talk to their tutor about. The learner can either download and complete this, or they could print it and make notes manually. In addition to which, we've added in a useful document for tutors, which is called the Content and Download Map. It explains which learning outcome has been covered in relation to the screen it appears on. So these are all included in our resource area. Back to the package itself. As we said before, each of those online packages are broken down into smaller chunks of information. We call them sections, but each section looks like a little mini lesson plan all in itself, with a little activity at the end of it. It's entirely up to the learner how they want to do this. They may do 1 or 2 screens, they might do a chunk of study at night, and also as well the tutor. They could say just do section 1 and come back to class. Go into what is academic essay writing. You'll see here we've got unlocking level 3, the keys, and you can see here what they have to apply at level 3, and then they've got a tip here saying that there's additional development units, so why don't you go and have a look at the referencing and plagiarism or critical thinking, etc. So the study skills are coming in there as well. As we progress through each of the screens, you can see that the writing is very clear. We've kept it in that kind of friendly style and approach. For ease of use, the table of contents could be collapsed as well, so you get a better, larger screen. And as we move through, you can see that the topic is being developed and discussed, and we're coming towards the end of this little section 1. So we're talking about the different levels, and here's the activity, and this is indicative of the types of interactive quizzes that we can add to the courses. So here is a self-marking quiz, so the learner will read the question and answer accordingly and then check. As we move on through the courses, into section 2 is broken down into learning outcomes. So we can include little whizzy things like this drag and drop exercise, where the learner can start to apply that knowledge that they've been learning all the way through. The levelling up exercise sits at the end of each of the learning packages, so the learner can either attempt this at home or the tutor can ask them to bring it back into class. It's just asking the learner to gather those skills and knowledge that they've learnt throughout and to start thinking about applying it. When the learner returns to class, they'll take the kit document in, as well as any handouts they can keep in their own documents. We hope that the packages will give the tutors, but most of all the learner, an opportunity to study in various different ways that will suit their styles of learning as well. The available unit. We've got units available at the moment. Moving forwards to January through to April, you'll see coming on board the following sections: sociology, sport, psychology and biology. Level 2 units should be available from February 2019. So getting involved, we've obviously updated the website, also on the Open Awards website in the blended learning resources. You should be able to go there and see where everything's up to, list of units, alongside which is actually a demonstration course with username and password. So if you want to have a look at that, please feel free to do so as well. We do like everybody having a look at our learning resources. Also as well, if you're working with customers and they do want to get involved, what they need to do is they need to book an appointment with myself to get started, and I can do that over the telephone. I can go out and see people as well, either or. But this chiefly when colleges are ready to move ahead, we need to work with them so that the tutors are trained and have the resources so they know how this works and how to interact with the learners and how that might work. We also need to set up some documentation. The MOU is the Memorandum of Understanding. That's how colleges and Open Awards will work on those units. There are some DFE requirements that we need to work through. There's some work to do around that. Thank you for listening. These are my final details, so do please encourage centres when you're out there, ask them to give me a shout.